The millionaire paid fortunes to cure his children, but the nanny discovered the truth. Raymond Gallagher sat in his mahogany-lined office, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the expensive Persian rug. His fingers traced the edges of yet another medical report, the words blurring together as he read them for the 100th time. The stark medical terminology couldn't mask the simple truth. His children were getting worse, not better. He pushed back from his desk, the leather chair squeaking softly. Standing, he walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the manicured gardens where Olivia and Ethan used to play. Now, those swings hung empty, the carefully maintained playground equipment untouched for months. "Mr. Gallagher?" His assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Dr. Morrison's office is on line 1. Raymond's jaw tightened as he pressed the button. "Put him through." He waited for the click before speaking again. "Doctor, tell me you have something new." "Mr. Gallagher, I've reviewed the latest test results." The doctor's voice carried that careful, measured tone that Raymond had grown to hate. Despite the aggressive treatment protocol, both Olivia and Ethan's conditions continue to decline. The muscle weakness is progressing faster than we anticipated. Raymond's free hand curled into a fist. "Money is no object, doctor. There must be something else we can try." "Sir, we've explored every available treatment option. We've consulted specialists across 3 continents. The nature of their condition is unique. We simply don't understand why conventional treatments aren't working." Raymond ended the call without responding, his shoulders heavy with defeat. He walked to a side table where a crystal decanter sat, pouring himself 2 fingers of scotch. The amber liquid caught the light, reminding him of Olivia's eyes that had grown increasingly dull with pain and fatigue. A soft knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called out, not turning around. His household manager, Mrs. Peters, entered with a manila folder. "Sir, I've finished the background check on the new nanny candidate, Sarah Mitchell. Her references are impeccable, and she has specific experience with special needs children." Raymond took the folder, scanning its contents. Sarah Mitchell, 28, bachelor's degree in child development, 5 years of experience as a private nanny. No criminal record, excellent credit score, glowing recommendations from previous employers. "She's waiting in the front parlor, sir," Mrs. Peters added. "Shall I send her away?" Raymond studied the photograph, clipped to the file. The young woman's warm smile and kind eyes sparked something he hadn't felt in months: hope. "No," he said, straightening his tie. "Show her in." As he waited, Raymond moved to stand by the window again, watching as Olivia and Ethan were helped across the garden by their current caretaker. Their movements were slow, deliberate, each step clearly causing them pain. Ethan stumbled, and Olivia reached out to steady him, always protecting each other, even as their own bodies betrayed them. The door opened, and Mrs. Peters showed Sarah in. Raymond turned, taking in the nanny's appearance. She was dressed professionally in a simple blouse and skirt, her dark hair neatly pulled back. But it was her expression that caught his attention. There was no pity in her eyes, only warmth and determination. "Mr. Gallagher," she said, extending her hand, "thank you for considering me." Her handshake was firm, confident. "Miss Mitchell, I understand you have experience with children requiring special care?" "Yes, sir. And please, call me Sarah." Raymond gestured toward the garden. "Those are my children, Olivia and Ethan. Their condition is complicated. The position would require absolute dedication and discretion." Sarah moved to the window, watching the children with genuine interest. "May I meet them?" Something in her voice, the gentle eagerness, the lack of hesitation, made Raymond nod. They walked together through the house and out to the garden. As they approached, both children looked up, their faces showing the usual wariness they displayed around strangers. But Sarah's smile never faltered. She knelt down to their level, her voice soft and warm. "Hello, Olivia, Ethan. I'm Sarah. I heard you both love stories. Would you like to hear one?" Raymond watched as his children's faces brightened, just slightly, at Sarah's gentle approach. For the first time in months, he felt a glimmer of possibility. Not for a medical miracle, perhaps, but for something his children needed just as desperately. Hope. Sarah arrived early the next morning, her heart heavy with purpose as she climbed the mansion's marble steps. Mrs. Peters greeted her with a tight smile and led her to the children's wing, where morning sunlight streamed through tall windows into a playroom filled with untouched toys. "They usually have breakfast in their rooms," Mrs. Peters explained, her voice dropping. "It's easier for them that way." Sarah nodded, following the housekeeper down the hallway. They stopped first at Olivia's room, where the little girl sat propped up in bed, pushing cereal around her bowl without eating. Her thin arms trembled with the effort of holding the spoon. "Good morning, Olivia," Sarah said softly, moving to sit beside the bed. "Would you like some help with that?" Olivia's eyes, amber like her father's but clouded with exhaustion, met Sarah's briefly before dropping back to her bowl. "I can do it," she whispered, but her spoon clattered against the ceramic as her hand shook. In the next room, Ethan lay curled on his side, refusing to look at his own breakfast tray. His dark hair fell across his face, hiding his expression, but Sarah could see the tension in his small frame. "Hey there, Ethan," Sarah kept her voice gentle. "Not hungry this morning?" He shrugged one shoulder, the movement barely perceptible. "It hurts to sit up," he admitted quietly. The morning crawled by with painful slowness. Sarah helped Olivia change into a soft pink dress, every movement careful and measured, as the girl winced. Getting Ethan dressed was equally challenging. His arms could barely lift above his shoulders, and tears of frustration gathered in his eyes, though he refused to let them fall. By afternoon, Sarah had learned the rhythm of their care. Medication times were marked on a detailed schedule, along with physical therapy exercises that neither child had the strength to complete. They spent most of their time in the playroom, where Sarah read to them from a collection of worn storybooks. "Could you help me walk to the window?" Olivia asked during a break between stories. "I like to look at the garden." Sarah supported the girl's weight as they made their way across the room, Olivia's steps uncertain and wobbly. At the window seat, Olivia collapsed with exhaustion, her breath coming in short gasps from the brief exertion. Ethan watched them from his position on the couch, his expression dark. "Dad promised he'd find a cure," he said suddenly, his voice bitter. "He promised Mom before she—" He cut himself off, turning away. Sarah's heart clenched at the pain in his voice. She spent the rest of the afternoon trying to engage them in gentle activities. Coloring, which Ethan could manage only by laying on his stomach and gripping the crayon with both hands. Listening to music, which brought a ghost of a smile to Olivia's pale face. As evening approached, both children grew more exhausted. Sarah helped them through their bedtime routines, noting how even brushing their teeth seemed to drain their energy. Once they were tucked in, she stayed until their breathing evened out in sleep. The children's room was quiet now, lit only by a soft nightlight. Sarah began tidying up, picking up dropped clothes and straightening books. As she knelt to retrieve a fallen pillow near Olivia's bed, something caught her eye. The corner of a notebook, partially hidden under the bed frame. Sarah glanced at the sleeping children before carefully pulling out what appeared to be a journal. The cover was decorated with butterfly stickers, the pages slightly crumpled. When she opened it, Olivia's careful handwriting filled the pages. Most entries were simple observations about daily life, But one passage made Sarah's breath catch. "I miss Mom so much. Sometimes I dream about her last wish, about the special medicine she said would make us better. But it didn't make us better. It made us worse. I don't tell Daddy because it makes him sad." Sarah stared at the words, her mind racing. Special medicine? A last wish? She looked at the sleeping children, their faces peaceful for the first time that day, and felt a chill run down her spine. Sarah sat cross-legged on her bed in the guest wing of the Gallagher mansion, Olivia's journal open in her lap. The table lamp cast a warm glow over the pages as she carefully turned them, her heart growing heavier with each entry. "Mom said the doctors would make us special," one entry read in Olivia's careful handwriting. "She held our hands when they gave us the medicine. It made my arm feel funny." Sarah reached for her phone, scrolling through articles about Elizabeth Gallagher, most focused on her charitable work and sudden passing, but nothing mentioned a medical trial. She dug deeper, searching medical research databases, finding only fragments of information about experimental treatments from that time period. Another entry caught her eye. "Mom's not feeling good after the medicine. She says we're brave soldiers fighting the battle together. But I'm scared." The dates matched up. 3 months before Elizabeth's death. Sarah grabbed a notepad, jotting down the timeline. The children's symptoms had started appearing shortly after their mother passed away, growing progressively worse over the past year. "My arms feel heavy today," a later entry read. "Ethan can't run anymore. Daddy keeps taking us to new doctors, but none of them know why. I want to tell him about the special medicine, but Mom made us promise to keep it secret." Sarah's hands trembled as she closed the journal. The pieces were falling into place. Elizabeth's involvement in some kind of trial, the children's mysterious illness, Raymond's desperate search for a cure. But why keep it secret? Why not tell the doctors about the trial? The next morning, she found Raymond in his study, surrounded by stacks of medical reports. Dark circles under his eyes suggested another sleepless night. "Mr. Gallagher," Sarah began, clutching the journal behind her back. "I need to ask you something about Mrs. Gallagher." Raymond looked up, his expression guarded. "What about Elizabeth? Was she involved in any medical trials before she passed away? Something that might have included the children?" His face hardened. "Where did you hear that?" Olivia's journal mentioned special medicine, doctors, and secrets. If there's a connection to their current condition. There isn't. Raymond cut her off sharply, standing up. Elizabeth participated in a small research study, yes, but it had nothing to do with the children. It was completely unrelated to their current situation. "But sir, Olivia wrote specifically about receiving medicine." "Miss Sarah," Raymond's voice grew cold, "you were hired to care for my children, not investigate my late wife's medical history. The trial was private, confidential, and has no bearing on their present condition." Sarah stood her ground. "With all due respect, sir, if there's any possibility that this trial is connected to their symptoms, shouldn't the doctors know? It could help with their treatment." "Enough!" Raymond slammed his hand on the desk, making Sarah jump. "The trial was unsuccessful, but it did not harm my children. Their condition is complicated. I have the best medical minds working on it. Your job is to make them comfortable, not play detective." She watched him turn away, his shoulders tense. "I only want to help them," she said softly. "Then help them by doing your job," he replied, without looking at her. "And Sarah? That journal belongs to my daughter. I trust you'll return it immediately." Sarah nodded, though he couldn't see it. As she turned to leave, she caught a glimpse of his reflection in the window. His face twisted with what looked like guilt or fear, or both. He was hiding something. She was certain of it now. The question was, how far would he go to keep it hidden? The weight of the journal felt heavy in her hands as she walked back to Olivia's room. Whatever secret Raymond was protecting, it was clearly bigger than a failed medical trial. But with the children getting worse by the day, could she afford to let it go? Sarah stood in Raymond's study, watching him pace behind his mahogany desk. Morning light filtered through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the expensive Persian rug. The wall of medical certificates and business achievements seemed to mock the situation. All his success couldn't save his children. "Mr. Gallagher," Sarah began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I understand your desire for privacy, but these are your children we're talking about. If there's even a chance this trial is connected—" "You don't understand anything," Raymond snapped, running his fingers through his graying hair. He looked older today, worn down by the weight of whatever he was carrying. Elizabeth made her choice. She wanted to help people, to make a difference. Sarah leaned forward in her chair. "What kind of trial was it?" Raymond's jaw clenched. He walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. "It was experimental. New technology, genetic modification, the kind of breakthrough that could have changed medicine forever." His voice dropped. Elizabeth believed in it. She believed so much He trailed off. "She what?" Sarah pressed. "She volunteered." Raymond turned, his face haunted. The trial was controversial. There were ethical concerns, funding issues, but Elizabeth saw the potential. She thought— He swallowed hard. She thought she could help create a cure for genetic disorders. "And the children?" Sarah's throat felt dry. "Were they part of it?" "No," Raymond said too quickly. "Absolutely not. They were never supposed to be involved." Sarah caught the slip. "Supposed to be?" Raymond's shoulders slumped. He sank into his leather chair, suddenly looking defeated. "It was meant to be contained, adults only. Elizabeth was one of 12 volunteers." He rubbed his temples. "The research facility had protocols, safeguards. What happened?" "Nothing happened." Raymond straightened, his walls going back up. "The trial failed. Elizabeth got sick, from unrelated causes. And now my children are ill, but it has nothing to do with that research." Sarah watched him carefully. "Then why won't you tell their doctors about it? Why keep it secret if there's no connection?" "Because," Raymond's voice turned sharp, "that trial never officially existed. The funding was private, off the books. If word got out—" He stood again, agitated. "Do you have any idea what that kind of scandal would do? The media attention? The last thing my children need is reporters camping outside their house, digging into their mother's past. But if it could help them—" "It can't help them." Raymond's fist hit the desk. "The research was destroyed. The facility closed. The other volunteers scattered. There's nothing to find." Sarah sat quietly for a moment, processing. "You're protecting something bigger than just your family's privacy, aren't you?" Raymond's face hardened. "Miss Sarah, you're treading dangerous ground. I've indulged your questions out of respect for your care of my children. But this conversation is over." "Sir." "Over." His tone left no room for argument. "Return to your duties. Focus on keeping Olivia and Ethan comfortable. That's what I'm paying you for." Sarah stood, smoothing her skirt. "Yes, sir." She walked to the door, then paused. "Just one more thing. What was the name of the research facility?" "Goodbye, Miss Sarah." She nodded and left, closing the door quietly behind her. In her room, she pulled out her laptop and opened a new document. At the top, she typed, "Elizabeth Gallagher, Medical Trial Investigation." Below it, she listed what she knew. Genetic modification. 12 volunteers. Private funding. Approximately 1 year before Elizabeth's death. She opened another tab and began searching medical research facilities in the area that had closed in the past few years. Sarah pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts. Her college roommate now worked at a major hospital. Maybe she could help navigate the medical databases. Another friend had connections in pharmaceutical research. As she worked, she could hear Olivia's weak cough echoing down the hallway. The sound strengthened her resolve. Whatever Raymond was hiding, whatever really happened in that trial, she would find out. The children's lives might depend on it. Sarah's fingers flew across her laptop keyboard, her small desk lamp casting a warm glow in her room at the Gallagher estate. After a week of digging through medical records and calling old contacts, the pieces were finally coming together. Her screen displayed a series of archived news articles and redacted medical documents. "Elizabeth Gallagher," she whispered, touching the photograph of a smiling woman with kind eyes. "What did they do to you?" The experimental treatment had been conducted at a private facility called Genesis Medical Research. While officially listed as a standard medical research center, Sarah had discovered encrypted files suggesting they'd been working on genetic modification far beyond what was legally permitted. She opened another document, this one detailing the rapid decline of Subject 7, Elizabeth's trial designation. The medical terminology was complex, but the pattern was clear. Within months of starting the treatment, Elizabeth had shown signs of cellular degradation. Her immune system had begun attacking itself. "Oh God," Sarah breathed, comparing Elizabeth's symptoms to her children's current condition. The similarities were undeniable. Muscle weakness, chronic pain, deteriorating motor functions. It was all there. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Martinez, her contact at the university hospital. "Found something. Call ASAP." Sarah's hands shook as she dialed. "What did you find?" "The treatment wasn't just experimental, Doctor," Martinez said, his voice grave. "It was designed to alter DNA at the cellular level. The idea was to eliminate genetic disorders by rewriting faulty genes." "But something went wrong?" "Catastrophically wrong. The changes didn't stop at the target genes. It created a cascade effect, triggering mutations that spread through the entire system. Worse, the alterations became hereditary." Sarah's stomach dropped. "The children inherited it." "From what you've told me about their symptoms, yes. The genetic damage passed from mother to children. Sarah, this kind of research was highly illegal. The ethical violations alone." "I have to confront him," Sarah said, gathering her evidence. "He needs to know what's really happening to his children." She found Raymond in his study, as usual. The setting sun cast long shadows across the expensive furniture. He looked up from his desk, irritation crossing his face. "Miss Sarah, I thought we discussed—" "Genesis Medical Research," she interrupted, dropping a folder on his desk. "Subject 7. That was Elizabeth, wasn't it?" The color drained from Raymond's face. "Where did you get these?" "It doesn't matter. What matters is that the treatment didn't just fail. It created genetic mutations that Elizabeth passed to Olivia and Ethan." She spread out the medical documents. "Look at the patterns. Elizabeth's decline matches exactly what's happening to them now." Raymond's hands trembled as he examined the papers. "You don't understand. The treatment was supposed to be revolutionary. Elizabeth believed in it so much. We all did." "But it went wrong," Sarah pressed. "And instead of telling the truth, you covered it up. Why?" Raymond slumped in his chair, suddenly looking old and defeated. "I funded the research," he admitted quietly. "My company, through shell corporations. When things went wrong, when Elizabeth got sick, there would have been investigations, lawsuits, hundreds of millions in damages. My entire empire would have collapsed." "So you buried it, even after Elizabeth died, even after the children started showing symptoms." "I've spent fortune after fortune trying to find a cure," Raymond protested. "The best doctors, the most advanced treatments." "But you never told them the real cause," Sarah cut in. "How can they treat something if they don't know what caused it? Your children are suffering because you're more worried about scandal than saving them." Raymond covered his face with his hands. "You're right," he whispered. "God help me. You're right. I was so scared of the truth coming out, of losing everything. I lost sight of what really mattered." "The children deserve to know the truth," Sarah said firmly. "And they deserve a real chance at treatment, not just throwing money at symptoms while hiding the cause." Raymond's shoulders shook as he stared at the medical documents spread across his mahogany desk. The setting sun painted harsh shadows across his face, highlighting the deep lines of worry etched there. "I never meant for any of this to happen," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Elizabeth was so excited about the trial. She believed it would help people, help families with genetic diseases." He picked up a photo of his late wife from his desk, his fingers trembling. "She trusted me when I said it was safe." Sarah stood quietly, watching this powerful man crumble before her. The study suddenly felt suffocating, despite its grandeur. Crystal decanters caught the fading sunlight, casting prisms on the walls that seemed to mock the gravity of the moment. "After she died," Raymond continued, "when Olivia first showed symptoms, I told myself it was something else. Anything else." He ran his hands through his silver hair. "Then Ethan started getting worse, too. I threw everything I had at it. Experimental treatments, specialists from around the world, private research teams." "But you never told them the real cause," Sarah said softly, sitting in the leather chair across from him. "How could I?" His voice rose sharply. "The moment I admitted the truth, everything would unravel. The company would face criminal charges. Hundreds of employees would lose their jobs. My children would become case studies, medical curiosities for the world to gawk at." Sarah watched him pace the room, his expensive shoes silent on the Persian rug. She could see the war raging within him, a father's love fighting against a businessman's instinct for self-preservation. "The treatments," he said, stopping at the window. "I thought if I could find a cure, make them better, nobody would need to know. The scandal would stay buried, and my children would be healthy again." He pressed his forehead against the cool glass. "But nothing works. Nothing helps." Sarah felt her heart twist. The man before her wasn't just a wealthy businessman hiding a scandal. He was a father drowning in guilt and fear. She stood and approached him carefully. "Raymond," she said gently, "your children need more than money thrown at the problem. They need the truth. They need doctors who understand what they're really fighting." He turned to face her, his eyes red-rimmed. "And what happens when the truth comes out? When everyone knows what I did? What I allowed to happen to my own family?" "Sometimes," Sarah said, "we have to face our fears to protect the ones we love." Raymond sank into his chair, deflated. "I see them getting worse every day. Olivia can barely walk now. Ethan's pain." His voice broke. "I did this to them. Me and my damned ambition." Sarah felt torn. Her instinct was to comfort him, to ease the obvious pain he was in. But another part of her recoiled at his continued focus on himself, his guilt, his fear, his reputation. Even now he seemed more concerned with the consequences he might face than with finding real help for his children. "I want to help," she said carefully, "but the children have to come first. Their health, their well-being, it has to matter more than anything else." Raymond nodded, but his eyes darted to the incriminating documents on his desk. Sarah could see him retreating, the walls coming back up. The moment of vulnerability was passing, replaced by the familiar mask of control. "I need time," he said, his voice growing distant. "To think, to plan. This isn't just about telling the truth, it's about protecting them from what comes after." Sarah felt her heart sink. She'd hoped his breakdown might lead to real change, but instead, he seemed to be spiraling deeper into his pattern of avoidance and control. The weight of the situation pressed down on her. The sick children upstairs, the grieving father before her, and the terrible truth that threatened to destroy them all. Sarah sat on the floor of the playroom, watching Olivia attempt to color in her sketchbook. The little girl's hand trembled as she gripped the crayon, determination etched across her young face. Beside them, Ethan leaned against a mountain of pillows, his eyes fixed on a book he could barely hold up. "Would you like me to read that to you?" Sarah asked softly. Ethan shook his head. "I can do it myself," he insisted, though his arms quivered with the effort. The morning light filtered through the large windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air. The playroom, filled with every toy and game imaginable, felt like a cruel reminder of all the things the children struggled to enjoy. "Look," Olivia said, pushing her drawing toward Sarah. The lines were wobbly, but Sarah could make out 3 figures holding hands: Olivia, Ethan, and their father. "Do you think Daddy will like it?" Sarah's heart clenched. "Of course he will, sweetheart. It's beautiful." A knock at the door drew their attention. Dr. Morrison, the latest specialist Raymond had hired, stood in the doorway. He was young, with kind eyes and an expensive suit that screamed of Raymond's deep pockets. "Time for your checkup," he announced cheerfully. Sarah helped Olivia to her feet, steadying her as she swayed slightly. The girl's legs, once strong enough for running and dancing, now struggled with the simple task of walking. "I don't want another test," Ethan mumbled, but he didn't resist when Sarah helped him up. As she watched Dr. Morrison lead them away, Sarah felt the weight of helplessness settle over her. This was the 3rd specialist this month alone. Raymond threw money at the problem like he was trying to build a wall between his children and their illness. But nothing changed. Later that afternoon, Sarah found herself in the garden, pushing Olivia in her wheelchair. The roses were in full bloom, their sweet scent filling the air. "Sarah?" Olivia's voice was thin but clear. "Are we going to get better?" The question hit Sarah like a physical blow. She stopped pushing the wheelchair and moved to kneel in front of Olivia. "I hope so, sweetheart. Your daddy is doing everything he can." "But it hurts more now," Olivia whispered. "And Ethan won't tell anyone, but I hear him crying at night." Sarah fought back tears. She gathered Olivia into a gentle hug, mindful of her fragile body. Over the girl's shoulder, she saw Raymond watching from his study window, his silhouette dark against the glass. That evening, after putting the children to bed, Sarah stood in the hallway, listening to Dr. Morrison's report to Raymond in the library. "The new treatment isn't showing the results we hoped for," the doctor was saying. "Their condition continues to deteriorate." "Money is no object," Raymond's voice was tight with desperation. "Whatever it takes. Mr. Gallagher, with all due respect, we're running out of options, without knowing the exact cause." "Then find more options." Raymond's fist slammed against his desk. Sarah pressed her hand against the wall, steadying herself. The truth burned inside her. The knowledge that could help these children was being buried under Raymond's fear and guilt. She thought about leaving, about walking away from this house of secrets and suffering. But then she remembered Olivia's drawing, Ethan's determination to read his own book, their brave smiles despite the pain. As she walked to her room that night, Sarah passed the children's bedroom. Through the crack in the door, she could see Ethan curled up in his bed, his small body shaking with silent sobs. Olivia lay in the next bed, her chest rising and falling in troubled sleep. Sarah stood there, torn between her duty to these innocent children and the mounting frustration of watching them suffer needlessly. Raymond's footsteps echoed down the hallway as another specialist was shown out. Another failed attempt at buying a solution to a problem that money couldn't fix. Sarah sat at her small desk in her room, rubbing her temples as she scrolled through another medical report on her laptop. The sound of Ethan's coughing echoed from down the hall, followed by the hurried footsteps of yet another nurse Raymond had hired. She clicked through her emails, scanning the responses from various medical professionals, all dead ends. The latest specialist, Dr. Morrison, had prescribed a new treatment that left both children exhausted and nauseous. Raymond's solution was to simply hire more nurses, more doctors, throw more money at the problem. Her phone buzzed. A text from Maria, her former colleague from the children's hospital where she'd worked before becoming a nanny. "Call me. Found something interesting." Sarah glanced at her watch, just past 9. The children would be settling down for bed. She grabbed her cardigan and slipped out onto the bedroom's small balcony, where the evening air was cool and private. Maria answered on the second ring. "Sarah, I've been digging through some old records. Tell me you found something useful." Sarah leaned against the railing, watching as another expensive car, probably another specialist, pulled up to the mansion's circular driveway. "Remember Dr. Jensen? He used to work at Memorial before that big scandal about unauthorized trials." Sarah's heart picked up speed. "The one who resigned suddenly?" "Yes. Well, I was talking to one of the nurses who worked with him. She mentioned something about a trial involving genetic modification. Sound familiar?" Sarah straightened. "Elizabeth's trial." "Exactly. And here's the thing. Dr. Jensen didn't just resign. He was pushed out because he opposed the trial. He tried to stop it, said it was too dangerous." Through the French doors, Sarah could see Raymond in his study across the courtyard, writing another check to what would undoubtedly be another dead-end treatment. Just that morning, Olivia had thrown up twice after the new medication. "Do you know where he is now?" Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's why I'm calling. He's practicing at a small clinic just outside the city. Keeps a low profile these days." Sarah watched as the specialist's car pulled away, leaving behind another prescription, another false hope. "Can you get me his contact information?" "Already did, but Sarah—" Maria paused. "Be careful. There's a reason these trials were kept quiet. Big money was involved." After getting Dr. Jensen's information, Sarah spent the next hour researching him online. His credentials were impressive. Harvard Medical School, pioneering research in genetic therapy, dozens of published papers. Until 5 years ago, when he seemingly disappeared from the medical community. The same time as Elizabeth's trial. Sarah's phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. "Dr. Jensen here. Maria explained your situation. I can meet tomorrow, 2 p.m. Corner Cafe on Maple Street. Come alone." She stared at the message, her hands trembling slightly. This could be the breakthrough the children needed. But if Raymond found out... A soft knock at her door made her jump. "Sarah." It was Olivia's voice, weak and tired. "My stomach hurts again." Sarah quickly deleted the message and went to open the door. Olivia stood there in her nightgown, pale and swaying slightly. "The new medicine makes me feel worse," she whispered. Picking up the little girl, Sarah carried her back to bed, her resolve strengthening with each step. Tomorrow, she would meet Dr. Jensen. She had to find answers, had to find a way to help these children, even if it meant going behind Raymond's back. As she tucked Olivia in, the girl already half asleep, Sarah glanced out the window at Raymond's study. He was still there, still writing checks, still trying to buy his way out of his guilt. She couldn't watch these children suffer any longer. Whatever Dr. Jensen knew, whatever truth he might reveal, she had to take that chance. She sent a quick reply to the text. "I'll be there." The Corner Cafe on Maple Street was nearly empty when Sarah arrived at 1:55 p.m. Afternoon sunlight filtered through dusty windows, casting long shadows across worn linoleum floors. She chose a booth in the back, away from the few elderly patrons nursing their coffee cups. At exactly 2 p.m., a man in his 60s entered. His white hair was disheveled, and his clothes, though clean, had seen better days. He scanned the cafe before his eyes settled on Sarah. Without ordering, he slid into the booth across from her. "Dr. Jensen?" Sarah kept her voice low. He nodded once, his weathered hands clasping together on the table. "Maria said you're working for Raymond Gallagher." "I'm the children's nanny." Sarah leaned forward. "They're getting worse, and the new treatments are making them sicker." He finished her sentence, his expression grim. "Of course they are, because Gallagher's throwing money at symptoms while ignoring the cause." A waitress approached, but Jensen waved her away with a practiced gesture. He pulled out a worn leather notebook from his jacket pocket and placed it on the table, his hand resting protectively over it. "What I'm about to tell you..." He glanced around the cafe. "There are people who spent millions ensuring this stayed buried. Your employer among them." Sarah's throat tightened. "The trial Elizabeth was involved in? Project Renaissance?" Jensen's voice dropped even lower. "It wasn't just a trial. It was an attempt to modify human genetics at a fundamental level. Enhancement, not treatment, making better humans." Sarah felt her stomach turn. "But Elizabeth was sick. She needed help." Jensen's laugh was bitter. "That's what they told the test subjects. Find desperate people, promise them miracles." He opened his notebook, revealing pages of handwritten notes and chemical formulas. "The truth is, Elizabeth was healthy when she entered the trial. They all were." "All?" Sarah's hands began to shake. 12 subjects, all wealthy, all connected to the project's investors, including Raymond Gallagher. Jensen's eyes hardened. He wasn't just Elizabeth's husband, he was one of the primary funders. Sarah remembered Raymond's face when she'd confronted him, the way he'd avoided meeting her eyes. "The children's condition is a direct result of the genetic modifications their mother underwent. The changes affected her DNA, passed down to them." Jensen pulled out several photographs, showing healthy people who gradually became gaunt and sickly. When the subjects started showing symptoms, the investors panicked. Instead of stopping the trial, they doubled down, threw more money at it, hoping to fix their mistake before anyone found out. "And Elizabeth? Dead within a year, like 8 others. Jensen's voice cracked. "I tried to stop it, warned them about the risks, but there was too much money involved, too many reputations at stake." Sarah thought of Olivia's journal, of Mommy's last wish. "Did she know? At the end?" Jensen nodded slowly. "She made me promise to protect her children. But Gallagher..." He clenched his fists. "He's still protecting the secret. Every specialist he hires, every treatment he tries, they're all connected to the original project. They're not trying to cure the children. They're trying to perfect the formula that killed their mother." The cafe seemed to spin around Sarah. She thought of all the specialists, all the new treatments, how each one seemed to make the children worse instead of better. "Why are you telling me this now?" Jensen closed his notebook carefully. "Because those children don't have much time left. The treatments Gallagher's pushing, they're accelerating the condition. He's so focused on hiding his guilt, he can't see he's killing them just like he killed their mother." Sarah felt tears burning in her eyes. "What can I do?" "That's your choice to make." Jensen stood, tucking the notebook away. "But remember, the truth isn't just about exposing Gallagher. It's about saving those children." He left her sitting there, staring at her untouched coffee. The afternoon light had shifted, casting different shadows now. Sarah thought of Olivia and Ethan, waiting at home for another round of treatments that were slowly poisoning them. She thought of Raymond in his study, writing checks to protect his secret while his children suffered. The drive back to the estate was a blur. Sarah parked in her usual spot, watching the sunset paint the mansion's windows blood red. Inside, she could hear Ethan coughing again. Another specialist's car was in the driveway. Her phone felt heavy in her pocket. One call could expose everything. But what would happen to the children then? Would the truth save them, or destroy what little chance they had left? Sarah stepped out of her car, the weight of her knowledge pressing down on her shoulders like a physical burden. She had no idea what to do next, but she knew she couldn't stand by and watch those children suffer any longer. Sarah stood in Raymond's study, her hands clenched at her sides, as she watched him sign another check with practiced efficiency. The afternoon sun streamed through the tall windows, casting harsh shadows across his face that seemed to deepen the lines of obsession etched there. "Mr. Gallagher, please," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "These aggressive treatments are making them worse, not better. Olivia can barely get out of bed now, and Ethan—" "I've arranged for Dr. Morrison to start a new protocol tomorrow," Raymond interrupted, not looking up from his desk. "It's showing promising results in preliminary trials." "More trials?" Sarah stepped forward, placing her palms flat on his mahogany desk. "They need their father, not another round of experiments. When was the last time you sat with them? Really talked to them?" Raymond's pen paused mid-signature. "I'm doing everything I can to save them." "No," Sarah said firmly, thinking of her conversation with Dr. Jensen. "You're doing everything you can to fix your mistake. There's a difference." His head snapped up, eyes flashing with anger and fear. "You don't understand what's at stake here." "I understand perfectly." Sarah's voice softened. "They're suffering, Mr. Gallagher. Not just physically. They're lonely, scared. They need their father's love more than they need another treatment." Raymond stood abruptly, pacing behind his desk. "Love won't cure them. Love won't reverse the damage." His voice cracked slightly. "Love won't bring Elizabeth back." "But it might help them heal," Sarah pressed. "We could try therapy, focus on their emotional well-being, give their bodies a chance to rest from all these treatments." "Rest?" Raymond laughed bitterly. "The disease doesn't rest, Sarah. It's progressing every day. We don't have time for feelings." From somewhere upstairs came the sound of Olivia's coughing, harsh and wet. Raymond flinched but didn't move toward the door. "Dr. Morrison has an impressive track record," he continued, shuffling through papers on his desk. "His research builds on the original, on previous studies, with enough funding." "More money isn't the answer," Sarah interrupted. "These doctors, these treatments, they're all connected to the same people who hurt Elizabeth, who hurt your children in the first place." Raymond's face went pale. "You don't know what you're talking about." "I know enough." Sarah walked around the desk, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "They need their father to be present, to acknowledge their pain. All of it, not just the physical symptoms." For a moment, something flickered in Raymond's eyes. Guilt, fear, maybe even understanding. Then it was gone, replaced by the same desperate determination she'd come to recognize. "Dr. Morrison will be here at 9 tomorrow morning," he said, shrugging off her touch. "Make sure the children are ready." Sarah watched helplessly as he returned to his paperwork, effectively dismissing her. Through the study's open door, she could see Ethan being helped up the stairs by his nurse, his small body trembling with effort. His face was turned toward the study, hoping perhaps to catch his father's eye, but Raymond remained focused on his desk. The next morning, another sleek car pulled into the driveway. Another doctor with promises of miracles. Another treatment that would drain more life from the children's already pale faces. Sarah stood by the window, watching Raymond greet Dr. Morrison with desperate enthusiasm. The doctor carried a briefcase full of papers, charts, consent forms, bills. more ways to hide the truth behind medical terminology and corporate liability waivers. Upstairs, Olivia was crying quietly into her pillow, too weak to even hold her beloved stuffed rabbit. Ethan sat in his wheelchair, staring blankly at the wall, not even reacting when the nurse drew yet another vial of blood. The mansion felt colder somehow, as if all the warmth was being slowly leached away by Raymond's relentless pursuit of a cure. Sarah could see it in the children's eyes. They were retreating into themselves, giving up hope that their father would ever truly see them, ever choose them over his guilt-driven mission to fix what he'd helped break. Sarah's fingers curled into fists as she watched Raymond review another stack of medical bills. The afternoon sun streaming through the study windows did nothing to warm the chill between them. "You're killing them," she said quietly. Raymond's pen stopped moving. "Excuse me?" "These treatments, the endless experiments, they're not helping. You're slowly killing your children because you're too proud to admit what really happened." He set down his pen with deliberate care. "I'm trying to save them." "No." Sarah moved closer to his desk. "You're trying to save yourself, your reputation, your precious public image." "How dare you?" Raymond started to rise, but Sarah cut him off. "I've seen the paperwork, Mr. Gallagher. The trial wasn't just a mistake. You helped fund it. You knew the risks, but you let Elizabeth participate anyway. And now—" She gestured to the stack of medical bills. "Now you're throwing money at the problem, hoping it'll go away before anyone connects the dots." Raymond's face flushed with anger. "You have no idea what you're talking about. I'm doing everything possible to help my children." "Everything except face the truth," Sarah pressed. "Everything except admit that your involvement in that trial—" "Enough!" Raymond slammed his hand on the desk. "I won't stand here and be lectured by a nanny about what's best for my children. Someone needs to. When was the last time you actually looked at them? Really looked?" Sarah's voice cracked. "Olivia can't even hold her stuffed animals anymore. Ethan stopped drawing. He used to love drawing, but now he just stares at the walls. They're slipping away, and you're too busy protecting your image to notice." "Get out," Raymond growled. "They need their father, not another round of experimental treatments. Not another specialist who's being paid to keep quiet about what really happened." Raymond stood, his height intimidating as he towered over her. "I said get out. You're fired." Sarah didn't move. "Fire me if you want, but it won't change the truth. You're not protecting them. You're protecting yourself. And they know it. They feel it every time you avoid their eyes, every time you send in another doctor instead of spending time with them yourself." Something flickered in Raymond's eyes. Pain, perhaps, or guilt, but it was quickly replaced by cold anger. "Security will escort you out. Pack your things and be gone by morning." Sarah turned to leave, then paused at the door. They deserve better than this. Better than a father who values his reputation more than their well-being. Back in her room, Sarah's hands shook as she began packing. Her laptop screen glowed in the growing darkness. Open to an email draft addressed to Karen Mitchell, an investigative journalist known for exposing medical scandals. The cursor blinked accusingly at her. She had all the evidence: copies of the trial documentation, Elizabeth's medical records, proof of Raymond's financial involvement, even photos showing the children's deterioration under the endless treatments. One email could blow it all wide open. But her finger hesitated over the send button. What would exposure do to the children? They'd lose their father, maybe to prison, definitely to disgrace. The mansion, the medical care, everything would be gone. They were already so fragile. Sarah closed her laptop without sending the email. She looked around her room, at the photos she'd taken of Olivia and Ethan on their good days. Rare smiles captured between treatments, precious moments of joy in their pain-filled lives. The truth could destroy everything, but keeping silent meant watching them suffer under their father's misguided attempts to protect himself. Either way, The children would pay the price for their father's choices. Sarah pulled out her phone, staring at Karen Mitchell's contact information. One call could change everything. Her thumb hovered over the number as tears blurred her vision. The weight of the decision pressed down on her like a physical thing, making it hard to breathe. In the distance, she heard Olivia coughing, the sound echoing through the empty halls of the mansion. No running feet, no concerned father rushing to comfort his daughter, just the hollow sound of suffering and silence. Sarah sat in her room, the weight of her phone feeling like lead in her hands. Karen Mitchell's contact information stared back at her, a simple tap away from changing everything. Through her window, she could see the sprawling gardens of the Gallagher estate, meticulously maintained yet oddly sterile, much like the life Raymond had created for his children. She thought about Olivia's journal entries, filled with confusion and longing for her father's attention. About Ethan's abandoned sketchbooks, gathering dust as treatments left him too weak to hold a pencil. The truth about their condition lay buried beneath layers of NDAs and hushed agreements, protected by Raymond's fortune and influence. What would Elizabeth want? Sarah whispered to herself, remembering the children's mother, whose final wish had somehow led to this nightmare. Her fingers trembled as she pulled up her recent photos. Snapshots of Olivia attempting to walk, Ethan trying to eat by himself, both children growing weaker despite the endless parade of specialists. The sound of footsteps in the hallway made her look up. Through the gap under her door, she could see Raymond's expensive shoes passing by, heading toward his study. No detour to check on his children, no pause to say goodnight. Just the steady click of leather soles on marble, moving away from responsibility. Sarah opened her laptop and began typing an email to Karen Mitchell. The words flowed easily. Too easily, perhaps. She detailed the experimental treatment, Raymond's involvement in funding it, the cover-up that followed Elizabeth's death. She attached documents, medical records, everything she'd gathered over the past weeks. But her cursor hovered over the send button, frozen by doubt. The children's faces flashed through her mind, their rare smiles, their trust in her, their desperate need for stability. Exposing Raymond would tear their world apart. Yet keeping silent meant watching them suffer through more futile treatments, while their father hid behind his wealth and shame. Her phone buzzed, a text from Karen Mitchell. Meeting went well. Story ready to run tomorrow morning. Last chance to add anything. Sarah's heart stopped. She hadn't authorized this. The meeting had been preliminary, just to discuss possibilities. She quickly dialed Karen's number, panic rising in her throat. Karen, wait. Sarah? Raymond's voice came from her doorway instead. She spun around to find him standing there, holding a printed copy of her email correspondence with Karen. His face was ash white, his hands shaking with rage. Mr. Gallagher, I can explain. Explain what? How you betrayed my trust, violated your NDA, went behind my back to destroy my family? His voice rose with each question, echoing off the walls. I'm trying to save your children. Sarah stood, forcing herself to meet his gaze. The treatments aren't working. They're getting worse, and you know why. They deserve the truth, and they deserve a father who puts them first. Get out. Raymond's words came through clenched teeth. Pack your things and leave, now, before I call the police. Please, just listen. Security will escort you off the property, if that story runs tomorrow. He left the threat hanging in the air between them. Sarah felt tears burning in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. They need help, Mr. Gallagher. Real help, not more experiments, not more cover-ups. What they need is none of your concern anymore. Raymond turned away, his shoulders rigid with anger. You have 30 minutes. Don't try to see the children. The door slammed behind him, leaving Sarah alone with her half-packed bags and the weight of her decisions. She could hear movement downstairs, security being summoned, no doubt. Somewhere in the house, a child coughed weakly, the sound carrying through the empty halls like a ghost's whisper. With trembling hands, she began to pack, each item a reminder of her time with Olivia and Ethan. Their drawings, their small gifts, the trust they'd placed in her. All of it crumbling under the weight of Raymond's secrets and her own desperate attempt to help them. Sarah sat in her small apartment, surrounded by cardboard boxes she hadn't bothered to unpack. 3 weeks had passed since that night at the Gallagher estate, but the children's faces haunted her every moment. A half-drunk cup of tea grew cold on her coffee table as she stared at the pile of drawings Olivia had given her, cheerful stick figures holding hands. A family that could have been. The morning sun filtered through her dusty windows, casting long shadows across the floor. She picked up one of Ethan's sketches, his trembling lines showing how hard he'd fought against his weakening muscles to create it. It was a portrait of her, roughly drawn but full of love, with "Thank you for caring" scrawled in wobbly handwriting at the bottom. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, touching the paper gently. "I thought I could help you both." Her phone buzzed. Another email from Karen Mitchell. The journalist had been persistent, asking for more details, promising to expose the truth. Sarah hadn't responded to any of them. The weight of her decision pressed down on her shoulders like a physical burden. She'd wanted to protect the children, but had she only made things worse? Through her contacts at the hospital, she learned that Raymond had hired 3 new specialists in the past week alone. Each one promised breakthrough treatments, cutting-edge therapies, miracle cures. But Sarah knew better. She'd seen the pattern before. The hope, the disappointment, the desperate search for the next solution. Her neighbor's children played outside, their laughter drifting through the thin walls. The sound made her think of Olivia's quiet giggles during their reading sessions, of Ethan's rare smiles when she'd helped him hold a pencil steady enough to draw. Those moments felt like a lifetime ago. Sarah pulled out her laptop, opening the folder of research she'd compiled about the experimental treatment. Pages of medical jargon and trial data stared back at her, but between the lines lay the truth about Elizabeth's death and the children's suffering. She'd been so certain that exposing everything would force Raymond to face reality, to stop hiding behind his wealth, and finally be the father his children needed. But now, alone in her apartment, doubt crept in like a shadow. What if the publicity only made things worse? What if Raymond's desperate attempts to maintain his reputation pushed him to try even more dangerous treatments? The children were already so fragile. Her phone rang. An unknown number. Her heart jumped, hoping it might be the children somehow reaching out. But she knew better. Raymond would never allow that. She let it go to voicemail, adding to the growing collection of unanswered calls. Through the grapevine of domestic staff and medical personnel, Sarah heard whispers about the Gallagher household. Raymond had become more reclusive, more obsessed. He'd converted an entire wing of the mansion into a private medical facility, bringing in equipment and specialists from around the world. The children were subjected to endless tests and treatments, each one promising to be the miracle cure that would save them. But the latest reports broke her heart. Olivia could no longer walk without assistance, and Ethan had stopped drawing altogether. Their condition was deteriorating faster than ever, while their father threw money at the problem, hoping to buy his way out of guilt and responsibility. Sarah picked up her phone, her finger hovering over Karen Mitchell's number. She could still expose everything, force the truth into the light. But the thought of causing the children more pain, more chaos in their already difficult lives, made her hesitate once again. Outside, the neighbors' children continued to play, their carefree laughter a stark contrast to the silence in her apartment. Sarah closed her eyes, remembering the warmth of Olivia's small hand in hers, the trust in Ethan's eyes when she helped him with his exercises. She'd promised to protect them, to help them heal. Instead, she sat here, powerless, while they suffered under their father's misguided attempts at redemption. Sarah's hands trembled as she held the wrinkled envelope. The return address was unmistakable, the Gallagher estate, but the handwriting belonged to neither Raymond nor his staff. The uneven letters, written with obvious effort, could only have come from Olivia and Ethan. She sat at her kitchen table, morning light streaming through the windows, and carefully opened the envelope. 2 pieces of paper fell out, one covered in Olivia's careful printing, the other bearing Ethan's shaky handwriting. "Dear Sarah," Olivia's letter began, "we miss you so much. The new nurses aren't like you. They don't read stories the way you do, and they don't understand when I'm scared at night. Daddy keeps bringing doctors, but I don't want more tests. I want you back." Tears blurred Sarah's vision as she moved on to Ethan's note. His usually neat writing was barely legible, showing how much his condition had deteriorated. "Sarah, everything hurts more now. The new treatments make me feel sick, but Dad won't listen when I tell him. He just keeps saying it's for our own good. Please come back. You were the only one who made us feel better." She pressed the letters to her chest, her heart aching. Through her network of contacts at the hospital, she'd heard about Raymond's increasingly desperate attempts at treatment. The children were subjected to endless tests, experimental procedures, and aggressive therapies, all in the name of finding a cure that seemed more elusive than ever. The clock on her wall ticked steadily as she read the letters again and again. Her small apartment felt suffocating, knowing that across town, Olivia and Ethan were suffering. The drawings they'd made for her still covered her refrigerator, happy scenes of what their life could have been, filled with color and joy instead of pain and medical equipment. Her phone buzzed with another email from Karen Mitchell. The journalist was still eager to expose Raymond's involvement in the failed medical trial, to reveal how his wealth had been used to cover up the truth rather than help his children heal. Sarah had been so certain that exposing everything would force Raymond to change, but now she wondered if there might be another way. She walked to her bedroom and pulled out the box where she'd stored all her research about the children's condition. Medical journals, trial data, and her own careful notes filled folder after folder. But mixed in with the clinical information were other items, photos of better days, when Olivia could still walk in the garden and Ethan could hold a pencil steady enough to draw. The children's letters felt heavy in her hands. They trusted her, needed her, and she'd left them alone with their father's obsessive pursuit of a cure. Yes, Raymond had fired her, but she'd also given up too easily, letting her anger at his actions override her devotion to the children. Sarah picked up her phone and deleted Karen Mitchell's latest email without reading it. The truth about the medical trial still needed to come out, but not at the cost of causing Olivia and Ethan more pain. There had to be a better way to help them heal, both physically and emotionally. She looked around her apartment, at the life she'd built in the week since leaving the Gallagher estate. It felt hollow, meaningless compared to the importance of her work with the children. They needed someone who would put their well-being first, someone who would fight for them, but also know when to be gentle. The decision crystallized in her mind. She would return, not as a defeated nanny crawling back, but as an advocate for Olivia and Ethan. She would face Raymond's anger and pride, standing firm in her conviction that the children needed emotional healing as much as physical treatment. Sarah picked up her phone again, this time dialing the Gallagher estate's number. As it rang, she gathered her courage, knowing that the path ahead would be difficult but necessary. The children had reached out to her, trusting her with their pain and hope. She wouldn't let them down again. Sarah's heels clicked against the marble floors of the Gallagher mansion as she made her way to Raymond's study. Her heart pounded, but her resolve remained firm. Through the heavy oak door, she could hear him on the phone, likely arranging another experimental treatment. She knocked twice and entered without waiting for a response. Raymond looked up, his face hardening at the sight of her. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and his usually immaculate suit was wrinkled. "You're not supposed to be here," he said, putting down the phone. "I made that clear when you fired me." Sarah stepped forward, placing the children's letters on his desk. "Read these, Raymond. Really read them." He stared at the papers but didn't touch them. "I'm doing everything I can for them. Every treatment, every specialist. That's not what they need." Sarah's voice rose with emotion. "Your children are suffering, not just from their condition, but from your obsession with hiding the truth. They know something's wrong, that you're keeping secrets." Raymond stood, his hands gripping the edge of his desk. "You don't understand. If people knew about my involvement in that trial—" "I understand perfectly," Sarah cut in. "You funded an experimental treatment that Elizabeth believed in. When it went wrong, you couldn't face your role in it. But hiding the truth hasn't protected anyone. It's only caused more pain." She watched as Raymond sank back into his chair, his shoulders slumping. For the first time, he looked at the letters, picking them up with trembling hands. "They're getting worse," Sarah said softly. "Not just physically. They're scared and confused. They need their father to be honest with them." Raymond read silently, his face growing paler with each line. When he finished, he pressed a hand to his mouth, closing his eyes. "I never wanted to hurt them," he whispered. "Elizabeth was so sure the treatment would work. We both were. When she got sick—" He swallowed hard. "I thought I could fix it. If I just found the right doctor, the right cure." "But that's not what they need from you right now," Sarah said, her voice gentler. "They need you to stop running from the truth, to acknowledge what happened and help them understand." Raymond looked up at her, his eyes red-rimmed. "How can I tell them that their mother and that we're responsible for their condition?" "Because the alternative is watching them suffer in silence, wondering why their father seems more concerned with secrets than with them." Sarah moved closer, her voice steady. "They're strong, Raymond. Stronger than you give them credit for. But they need you to be strong too." He picked up the letters again, reading them one more time. "Olivia says she's scared at night," he murmured. "I didn't even know." "There's a lot you don't know," Sarah said. "Because you've been so focused on finding a cure, you've missed seeing who your children really are, how they cope, what they need." Raymond was quiet for a long moment, staring at his children's handwriting. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, less defensive, more vulnerable. "I don't know how to start," he admitted. "How do I even begin to explain?" "By being honest," Sarah replied. "By showing them that facing the truth, however painful, is better than living with lies." Raymond nodded slowly, setting the letters down with care. "Will you help me?" he asked. "I don't think I can do this alone." "That's why I came back," Sarah said. "Not just for them, but for you too, because all of you deserve a chance to heal, really heal, not just chase after miracle cures." "You're right," Raymond said, standing up straighter. "It's time to tell them everything, about their mother, about the trial, about my part in all of it." The late afternoon sun filtered through the large windows of the Gallagher mansion's sitting room, casting long shadows across the antique Persian rug. Raymond sat in his leather armchair, his usual commanding presence diminished by the weight of what he needed to say. Across from him, Olivia and Ethan perched on the plush sofa, their small frames looking even more fragile in the fading light. Sarah stood quietly by the doorway, offering silent support. "There's something important I need to tell you both," Raymond began, his voice softer than usual. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, trying to meet their eyes. "Something I should have told you a long time ago." Olivia shifted closer to her brother, her thin fingers intertwining with his. Ethan's face remained cautious, years of disappointment evident in his guarded expression. "It's about your mother," Raymond continued, his throat tightening, "and about why you've been sick." He paused, gathering his courage. "Before she passed away, your mother and I were involved in a medical trial. We thought it would help people, help you both. But things went wrong." "What kind of trial?" Ethan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Raymond's hands clasped together so tightly his knuckles turned white. "It was an experimental treatment. Your mother believed in it so much. We both did. But—" he drew a shaky breath. "The treatment had side effects we didn't know about. Effects that—" His voice cracked. "That made us sick?" Olivia finished, her blue eyes wide with understanding. Raymond nodded, tears threatening to spill. "Yes, sweetheart. And instead of being honest about it, I tried to hide it. I kept looking for cures, throwing money at treatments, thinking I could fix everything without having to face what we'd done." "Is that why you're always gone?" Ethan's question cut through the air like a knife. "Looking for doctors instead of being with us?" The truth in those words made Raymond flinch. "Yes. I've been running away. From the guilt, from the responsibility. I thought if I could find the right doctor, the right treatment, everything would be okay. But I was wrong. So wrong." Olivia's lip trembled. "Did Mom know it would make us sick?" "No, sweetheart," Raymond rushed to say, moving to kneel in front of them. "Your mother would never have done anything to hurt you. She thought she was protecting you. We both did. We made a terrible mistake, and I've made it worse by trying to hide it." The room fell silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Raymond reached out, tentatively taking one of each of their hands in his. "I know saying sorry isn't enough," he continued, his voice thick with emotion. "But I am sorry. So deeply sorry. Not just for what happened with the trial, but for not being the father you needed. For being more worried about what people would think than about what you were going through." Ethan pulled his hand away, but Olivia held on. "Will we ever get better?" she asked. "I don't know," Raymond answered honestly, the words costing him dearly. "But what I do know is that from now on, we'll face it together. No more secrets, no more endless treatments that only make things worse. We'll focus on what helps you feel better, really better, not just what looks good on paper." Sarah stepped forward then, placing a gentle hand on Raymond's shoulder. "Your father wants to be here for you now," she added softly. "To listen to what you need, not just what he thinks you need." Tears rolled down Olivia's cheeks as she launched herself into Raymond's arms. After a moment's hesitation, Ethan joined them, his small body shaking with silent sobs. Raymond held them both, his own tears falling freely now. "I promise," he whispered into their hair. "From now on, you come first. Not my reputation, not what other people think. Just you. Both of you." The family remained embraced as the sun continued its descent, casting the room in soft, golden light. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was a beginning. The truth, though painful, had finally been spoken. And with it came the first real chance for healing. Raymond sat in Dr. Emily Chen's office, surrounded by certificates and calming Zen artwork. The atmosphere was different from the sterile, clinical environments he'd grown accustomed to. Sarah sat beside him, her presence a steady anchor as they listened to the holistic medicine specialist's approach. "Mr. Gallagher," Dr. Chen said, her voice gentle but firm, "treating illness isn't just about medication and procedures. We need to address the whole person, body, mind, and spirit." Raymond shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "I understand, but my children are in pain. They need their father," Dr. Chen interrupted softly. "Yes, we'll work on their physical symptoms, but healing starts with trust and emotional security." Sarah nodded encouragingly as Raymond absorbed these words. He'd spent millions on experimental treatments, yet here was someone suggesting that love and attention might be just as important as medicine. Dr. Chen brought in Dr. Marcus Thompson, a pediatric specialist who focused on chronic conditions, and Dr. Sarah Williams, a child psychologist. Together, they developed a comprehensive treatment plan that included gentle physical therapy, art therapy, and family counseling. The first few sessions were challenging. In the art therapy room, Olivia sat with trembling hands, struggling to hold a paintbrush. Raymond watched, fighting the urge to rush in and help. "Let her try," Dr. Williams whispered. "She needs to know you believe in her strength." Slowly, Olivia managed to create a colorful butterfly, her face lighting up with pride as she showed it to her father. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," Raymond said, his voice thick with emotion. Ethan's physical therapy sessions were equally moving. Instead of harsh exercises that left him exhausted, the new approach focused on building strength through play. Raymond joined these sessions, learning how to support his son without overwhelming him. "Dad, watch this," Ethan called out one day, managing to throw a softball across the room. It wasn't a far throw, but the smile on his face was worth more than any expensive treatment. Dr. Chen introduced meditation and breathing exercises, teaching the children how to manage their pain without relying solely on medication. Raymond participated too, learning to slow down and be present with his children instead of constantly searching for the next miracle cure. The most significant changes happened during their family therapy sessions. Dr. Williams created a safe space where the children could express their fears and frustrations. "I was scared you didn't love us anymore," Olivia admitted one day, her voice small. "You were always gone, always talking to doctors instead of us." Raymond's heart shattered. "I thought I was helping," he said, reaching for her hand. "I was so wrong. I was running from my guilt instead of being here with you." As weeks passed, the children's improvement became noticeable. Their pain levels decreased, and their energy improved. But more importantly, their eyes began to shine again. They laughed more, shared more, and gradually started to trust their father's presence. During their morning routine, which now included gentle stretching exercises, Raymond noticed Olivia attempting a more challenging pose. Instead of rushing to help or calling a doctor, he simply stood nearby, ready if needed but allowing her to test her own strength. "I did it, Dad," she exclaimed as she held the pose. "You sure did, sweetheart," he replied, his chest swelling with pride. Ethan, who used to hide in his room during the day, started joining them for meals without prompting. He even began sharing stories about his favorite books, something he hadn't done in years. One evening, as Raymond read them a bedtime story, a new routine Dr. Williams had suggested, both children curled up next to him on Olivia's bed. The physical closeness would have been unthinkable months ago. "Can we do this again tomorrow?" Ethan asked, his head resting against Raymond's shoulder. "Every night," Raymond promised, finally understanding that this, simply being present, being their father, was the most powerful medicine he could offer. Sarah watched from the doorway as the family continued to heal, not just physically, but emotionally. The expensive treatments and desperate searches had been replaced by something far more valuable: time, attention, and love. Raymond stood in the doorway of the playroom, watching his children with newfound appreciation. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, casting a warm glow over Olivia and Ethan as they worked on a puzzle together. Just months ago, such a simple activity would have been impossible for them. "Dad, we need help with this piece," Olivia called out, her voice stronger than it had been in years. Instead of immediately rushing over, Raymond walked slowly, savoring each step toward them. "Which section are you working on?" he asked, lowering himself to sit cross-legged on the floor beside them. The position felt foreign. He'd always kept himself at a distance, afraid to see their suffering up close. "The sky part," Ethan explained, pointing to the blue pieces scattered around them. "It's really hard because it's all the same color." Raymond picked up a piece, turning it in his hands. "Sometimes the hardest parts are the ones that seem the same on the surface. You have to look closer to see how they fit together." The words struck him as he said them. How many times had he looked at his children's condition as just a problem to solve, throwing money at treatments without seeing the deeper connections? Their morning routine had transformed. Instead of rushing off to make calls to specialists, Raymond now joined them for breakfast. He learned how Olivia liked her toast cut into triangles and how Ethan preferred his orange juice without pulp. Small details he'd never noticed before became precious knowledge. "Mr. Gallagher," Dr. Chen said during their weekly check-in, "your children's latest test results show remarkable improvement. Their pain levels are down, and their muscle strength is increasing steadily." Raymond nodded, but his focus wasn't on the medical charts. They smiled at breakfast today, both of them. Real smiles that reached their eyes. "Doctor," Chen's own smile widened. "That's exactly what I'm talking about. Their physical improvement is directly linked to their emotional well-being." The revelation led Raymond to a decision. In his office later that day, he began researching ethical medical research facilities. His wealth, once used to chase miracle cures, could serve a better purpose. "Sarah," he called to the nanny who had become more like family, "I need your help with something." She entered his office, noticing the stacks of papers on his desk. "What are you working on?" "I want to establish a foundation," he explained, spreading out the documents. "One that funds transparent, ethical medical research. No more secret trials, no more desperate families being taken advantage of." Sarah sat down, her eyes scanning the papers. "You're really doing this?" "The money I spent trying to hide the truth could have helped so many families," Raymond admitted. "It's time to make that right." He spent the afternoon making calls, not to doctors promising quick fixes, but to medical ethics boards and research institutions. Each conversation felt like another step toward redemption. Later that evening, Raymond sat between his children on the living room couch. Olivia leaned against his left shoulder while Ethan curled up on his right side. They were watching a nature documentary, something they'd started doing together every evening. "Dad," Olivia said during a quiet moment, "you're different now." Raymond's heart tightened. "Different how, sweetheart?" "You're here," Ethan answered simply. "Like, really here. Not just in the room, but with us." Raymond wrapped his arms around both children, pulling them closer. "I'm sorry it took me so long to understand what that means." As the documentary continued playing, Raymond's mind wandered to the foundation plans on his desk. He thought about other families struggling with similar battles, other children needing help, other parents lost in their guilt and fear. His wealth could do more than fund treatments. It could prevent others from making the same mistakes he had. The foundation would focus on developing treatments that considered the whole patient, not just the symptoms. It would require transparency, ethical practices, and most importantly, would never prioritize profit over patient well-being. "Can we have pizza for dinner?" Ethan's question pulled Raymond back to the present moment. "With extra cheese?" Olivia added hopefully. Raymond smiled, squeezing them both gently. "Absolutely. And maybe ice cream after?" Their delighted gasps reminded him that sometimes the best medicine was simply being present, being their father, and letting love heal what money couldn't. Sarah watched from the kitchen doorway as Olivia carefully spread peanut butter on her sandwich. 2 months ago, the girl could barely hold the knife steady. Now, Though her movements were still deliberate, they carried purpose and strength. "Don't forget the honey," Ethan reminded his sister, standing beside her at the counter. His own lunch was already packed, a sign of his growing independence. Sarah stepped forward, adjusting Ethan's collar. "Are you excited about art class today?" His eyes lit up. "Mrs. Peterson said we're starting clay sculptures." The kitchen, once a sterile space where hired help prepared meals in silence, had become the heart of the house. Breakfast dishes sat in the sink, evidence of Raymond joining his children for morning meals. A calendar on the fridge tracked doctor's appointments alongside school activities and playdates. "I can't believe how much has changed," Raymond said, entering the kitchen. He was dressed casually in a sweater and slacks, no longer wearing the rigid suits that had been his armor. Sarah nodded, helping Olivia pack her lunch. "They're getting stronger every day." "Not just physically," Raymond added, watching his children with pride. "Dr. Chen says their emotional progress is remarkable." The new treatment approach, combining gentle physical therapy with counseling and family bonding time, had transformed the children. Their pain had decreased significantly, and their energy levels were steadily improving. "Dad," Olivia called out, "can Sarah come to my presentation next week? It's about endangered animals." Raymond smiled. "Of course, if Sarah would like to." "I wouldn't miss it," Sarah replied, touched by the invitation. Her role had evolved far beyond that of a typical nanny. She had become part of their healing journey, a bridge between past and present. The morning routine continued with comfortable familiarity. Sarah helped Ethan find his missing library book, while Raymond braided Olivia's hair, a skill he'd recently learned from watching online tutorials. The children's laughter echoed through the house, replacing the heavy silence that had once dominated these halls. "Remember," Sarah said as they gathered their backpacks, "we have art therapy after school today." The sessions had become a favorite activity. Through painting and sculpture, the children expressed feelings they couldn't always put into words. Their artwork, proudly displayed throughout the house, told the story of their healing, from dark, confused scribbles to bright, hopeful compositions. Raymond knelt down, hugging each child before they left for school. "Have a wonderful day. I'll be there to pick you up myself." Sarah watched the interaction with quiet satisfaction. Gone was the distant father who delegated everything to staff. In his place stood a man who understood that his presence mattered more than any treatment money could buy. As the children climbed into the car, Sarah turned to Raymond. "They're thriving." "Thanks to you," he replied. "You showed me what they really needed." "They needed their father," Sarah corrected gently. "I just helped you see that." The drive to school was filled with chatter about upcoming projects and friends. Olivia had joined the environmental club, while Ethan was excited about his first piano recital. These normal childhood activities had once seemed impossible. In the school parking lot, Sarah watched the children walk confidently toward the building. Ethan no longer needed assistance climbing the stairs, and Olivia carried her own backpack with ease. Other parents and teachers waved warmly. The Gallagher children had become known for their resilience rather than their illness. "Their teacher says they're catching up beautifully," Sarah told Raymond as they watched from the car. "Olivia's reading has improved dramatically, and Ethan's making friends in his math group." Raymond's eyes glistened with pride and perhaps a few tears. "I used to think I could fix everything with money, but watching them now, seeing them grow and heal, I understand that what they needed most was simply love and presence." The morning bell rang, and the last few students hurried inside. Sarah and Raymond stayed a moment longer, savoring the sight of their children disappearing into the world of normal childhood experiences, a world that had once seemed forever out of reach. Raymond's fingers hovered over the keyboard, his heart pounding against his ribs. The press release sat ready to send, every word carefully chosen with his PR team. But this wasn't about spin or damage control. It was about honesty. "Are you sure about this?" Sarah asked, standing beside his desk in the study. He nodded slowly. "The children deserve better than a father who hides in shame." The statement detailed everything: his involvement in funding the experimental treatment, Elizabeth's participation, and the devastating effects on their children. He included his years of desperate attempts to cover it up, and how that decision had only caused more harm. "Send it," he whispered, more to himself than to Sarah. With a single click, the truth was out. Within hours, major news outlets picked up the story. Raymond's phone buzzed constantly with notifications, but he refused to look at them. Instead, he sat with Olivia and Ethan in the garden, answering their questions honestly for the first time. "So that's why Mommy got sick?" Olivia asked, her voice small but steady. "Yes, sweetheart. And I'm so sorry I didn't tell you sooner." Ethan leaned against his father's arm. "Are people going to be mad at you?" "Some might be," Raymond admitted. "But hiding the truth hasn't helped anyone. Sometimes being brave means facing our mistakes." The first responses began flooding in. Sarah monitored the news while Raymond focused on his children. To everyone's surprise, the public reaction wasn't the scandal they'd feared. Other families affected by similar medical trials began coming forward. Support groups formed online. Medical ethics organizations reached out, asking Raymond to share his story. A reporter from the Daily Chronicle called, requesting an interview. "People aren't interested in crucifying you, Mr. Gallagher," she explained. "They want to understand how this happened, to prevent it from happening again." That evening, as Raymond scrolled through messages on his phone, tears welled in his eyes. There were dozens of supportive emails from other parents, medical professionals, and even some of his business associates. "Listen to this," he said to Sarah, reading from one message. "Thank you for your courage in coming forward. My daughter was part of a similar trial. We've been afraid to speak up, but now we know we're not alone." Sarah squeezed his shoulder. "You've given others the strength to tell their stories too." The weight that had pressed on Raymond's chest for years began to lift. The secret had been a poison, slowly destroying him and his relationship with his children. Now, in the light of truth, healing seemed possible. Olivia and Ethan's doctors called, praising the decision. "Stress and secrecy can manifest physically," they explained. "Being open about their condition might actually help their recovery." The children seemed lighter, too. At dinner that night, Ethan asked questions about the experiment without fear. Olivia shared memories of her mother that she'd been afraid to mention before. The silence that had suffocated their home was finally broken. "I thought everyone would hate us," Raymond confessed to Sarah as they watched the children play in the garden. "I convinced myself the scandal would destroy their future." "Sometimes the stories we tell ourselves are scarier than reality," Sarah replied. "People can be more understanding than we expect." Raymond watched his children chase each other around the fountain, their laughter echoing across the grounds. The truth hadn't magically cured their condition, but it had freed them from the burden of secrecy. Their home felt different now, as if all the windows had been thrown open, letting in fresh air and light. Medical journals requested interviews about the experimental treatment's long-term effects. Support poured in from unexpected places. Even some of Raymond's harshest business critics praised his transparency. Sitting in his study that evening, Raymond held Elizabeth's photo, speaking to it softly. "I should have done this years ago," he whispered. "I was so afraid of judgment that I forgot what really mattered, our children's well-being." The sound of Olivia and Ethan's voices drifted up from the garden, where they were helping Sarah plant new flowers. Their giggles mixed with the evening bird song, a reminder that life could still be beautiful, even after facing difficult truths. The cabin nestled in the mountains looked nothing like their mansion. Its wooden walls and simple furniture offered a stark contrast to their usual luxury. But that was exactly what Raymond wanted. As he watched Olivia and Ethan explore the cozy living room, he realized how much they all needed this escape. "Dad, look at the view." Ethan pressed his face against the large window overlooking the lake. His reflection showed more color in his cheeks than Raymond had seen in months. Sarah had suggested this retreat, a week away from the media attention, the medical appointments, and the weight of their past. The cabin, owned by an old friend of hers, promised the solitude they desperately needed. Olivia settled into a worn leather armchair, her favorite book in her lap. "It's so quiet here," she remarked, wonder in her voice. "I can actually hear the birds." Raymond began unpacking their bags, taking care with the children's medications. They still needed their treatments, but the doctors had agreed that fresh mountain air and peace of mind could work wonders alongside the medicine. That afternoon, they walked down to the lake. The path was gentle enough for both children to manage, though they took frequent breaks. Raymond carried a picnic basket Sarah had packed for them, filled with simple sandwiches and fresh fruit. "Tell me about Mom again," Ethan asked, as they sat on a checkered blanket by the water. "What made her laugh?" Raymond smiled, no longer afraid of these questions. "She loved silly jokes. The worse they were, the harder she'd laugh." He picked up a smooth stone. "She taught me how to skip rocks here, actually. We came to this lake once before you were born." "Show us." Olivia scooted closer, her eyes bright with interest. Raymond demonstrated, the stone bouncing 4 times before sinking. Soon, they were all trying, their laughter echoing across the water with each failed attempt. Ethan's stones plunked straight down, while Olivia managed a single skip that had her cheering. As the sun began to set, they gathered around a small fire pit outside the cabin. Raymond told stories about Elizabeth, not the sad ones about her illness, but the happy memories they'd never felt free to discuss before. How she sang off-key while cooking. The way she collected heart-shaped rocks from every place they visited. "I found this in my drawer yesterday," Olivia said, pulling out a small heart-shaped stone. "I didn't know why I kept it, but now I remember. Mom gave it to me." Raymond wrapped an arm around her shoulders. "She found that one on the beach during our last summer together." The flames cast dancing shadows on their faces as they roasted marshmallows, a treat they'd never tried before. Ethan's first attempt caught fire, and instead of getting upset as he might have in the past, he laughed so hard he nearly fell off his log seat. "Mom would have loved this," he said, sticky marshmallow on his chin. "She would have," Raymond agreed, helping him clean up. "She always said the best memories come from the simplest moments." Later that night, as the children prepared for bed in their shared room, Raymond heard something he hadn't heard in years, genuine, unrestrained giggles. He peeked in to find Olivia and Ethan having a pillow fight, their movements stronger and more confident than they'd been in months. "Dad," Ethan called out when he spotted him, "help me get Olivia." Before he could think about propriety or maintaining his usual composure, Raymond found himself drawn into their game. Soon, feathers were flying everywhere as they swung pillows at each other, all 3 of them laughing until tears streamed down their faces. They collapsed onto Ethan's bed, out of breath but still giggling. Raymond couldn't remember the last time he'd heard such pure joy from his children, or felt it himself. In that moment, surrounded by scattered feathers and the sound of their laughter, he knew they were finally healing. Not just in body, but in spirit. Raymond stood in the wings of the auditorium, watching as Olivia adjusted the microphone. At 17, she carried herself with a quiet confidence that reminded him so much of Elizabeth. The audience of medical students and ethics board members waited attentively. 6 years ago, I could barely walk up a flight of stairs, Olivia began, her voice steady. My brother and I were trapped in a cycle of experimental treatments that did more harm than good. We were victims of a system that valued profit over people." In the front row, Ethan nodded encouragingly at his sister. At 15, he'd grown tall and strong, no trace remaining of the frail boy he'd once been. His notebook was open, ready to take notes for their next presentation. "Our story isn't unique," Olivia continued, "but we're among the lucky ones. We had people who fought for us, our nanny Sarah, who refused to stay silent, and our father, who finally chose truth over reputation." Raymond felt his throat tighten. The memory of those dark days still haunted him, but seeing his children now, using their experience to create change, filled him with profound pride. After the presentation, Ethan joined his sister on stage for the Q&A session. They worked seamlessly together, sharing their perspectives on medical ethics and patient advocacy. Ethan handled the technical questions about the treatments they'd endured, while Olivia focused on the emotional impact and recovery process. "The most important lesson," Ethan explained to a young medical student, "is that healing isn't just about medicine. It's about honesty, support, and treating patients like whole people, not just symptoms to cure." In the lobby afterward, Raymond watched as his children spoke with attendees. A mother approached them, tears in her eyes, holding the hand of a small boy who reminded Raymond painfully of Ethan at that age. "Your story gives us hope," the mother said. "We've been struggling with similar issues, doctors who won't listen, treatments that seem to make things worse." Olivia gently took the woman's other hand. "Here's my card. We have a support network now, and we can connect you with ethical medical professionals who will actually help." Ethan knelt down to the boy's level. "Hey, buddy, what's your name?" "Marcus," the boy whispered. "You know what, Marcus? I used to be scared too. But you're braver than you know, and you've got your mom fighting for you. That makes you pretty lucky." Raymond observed as his children handled each interaction with compassion and wisdom beyond their years. The Gallagher Foundation, which they'd established 2 years ago, had already helped dozens of families navigate similar medical challenges. Later that evening, as they packed up their presentation materials, Raymond overheard Ethan and Olivia planning their next project, a summer camp for children recovering from medical trauma. "We could have art therapy, swimming when they're strong enough, and just let them be kids for a while," Olivia suggested, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. "And support groups for the parents," Ethan added. "They need healing too." Raymond watched them work, their heads bent together over Ethan's notebook, sketching out plans and possibilities. They'd come so far from those dark days of pain and secrets. Now they were forces for change, using their story to prevent other families from suffering as they had. The children he'd once desperately tried to protect were now protecting others. They'd taken their pain and transformed it into purpose, their struggles into strength. Every time they spoke at events like today's, every family they helped was a testament to their resilience and compassion. As Raymond gathered their coats, he caught Olivia's eye across the room. She smiled at him, that warm, knowing smile that always reminded him of Elizabeth. They had all grown so much, healed so much. His children weren't just surviving now, they were thriving and helping others find their way to healing, too. Raymond straightened his tie as he walked through the pristine halls of the Gallagher Medical Research Center. The building, once a monument to his guilt and desperate attempts at redemption, now stood as a beacon of hope. Framed photographs lined the walls, smiling faces of families who'd found help here, research teams celebrating breakthroughs, and at the center, a portrait of Elizabeth that reminded everyone why this work mattered. "Mr. Gallagher," Dr. Chen called out, hurrying to catch up with him. "The Ethics Board approved our new treatment protocol. We can begin the clinical trials next month." Raymond nodded, remembering how different things had been just a few years ago. "And the families? They've all been fully informed?" "Yes, sir. Complete transparency, just as you insisted. Every risk, every potential outcome. It's all documented and explained in terms they can understand. They entered the conference room, where the research team waited. Raymond took his seat at the head of the table, surrounded by doctors and scientists who shared his vision for ethical medical advancement. 6 years ago, Raymond began, I stood in another room like this, desperate for answers, willing to try anything to save my children. He paused, letting the weight of those words sink in. I lost sight of what mattered most, the human cost of our decisions. The team listened intently as Raymond reviewed their latest projects. Each proposal was examined not just for its scientific merit, but for its impact on patients' lives. Gone were the days of rushed trials and hidden risks. Every step forward was measured, careful, and always with the patient's well-being at the forefront. Later that afternoon, Raymond visited the family support center attached to the research facility. The space was bright and welcoming, filled with comfortable furniture and play areas for children. Support group meetings were in session, and he could hear the murmur of voices sharing experiences and hope. Sarah, who now ran the support programs, met him by the entrance. The new families are settling in well, she reported. Having Olivia and Ethan speak to them last week made a huge difference. They can see what's possible. Raymond watched through the window as a young girl practiced walking with her new mobility aid, her mother cheering her on. The scene brought back memories of Olivia's first steps after their new treatment approach. Not just medical intervention, but holistic care that considered the whole person. We received another invitation, Sarah mentioned, handing him an envelope. They want you to speak at the International Medical Ethics Conference. Your story is changing how people think about medical research. Raymond accepted the invitation, thinking about how far they'd come. His name, once whispered in connection with scandal and cover-ups, was now associated with reform and patient advocacy. The Gallagher Protocol, as it had come to be known, was being adopted by research facilities worldwide. In his office, Raymond reviewed the latest patient outcomes. Each success story was carefully documented, not just in medical terms, but in the real human impact of their work. Children returning to school, families rebuilding their lives, hope replacing despair. A knock at his door interrupted his thoughts. It was one of the mothers from the support group, holding her daughter's hand. Mr. Gallagher, she said, tears in her eyes, I just wanted to thank you. 6 months ago, we were lost. No one would listen. No one seemed to care. But here, she gestured around her. Here, we found more than just medical care. We found understanding. Raymond stood and walked around his desk. How is Emma doing? He asked, kneeling to the little girl's level. I can do cartwheels now, Emma announced proudly. Her mother laughed. The physical therapy program has been amazing, but it's more than that. For the first time, we don't feel alone. As they left, Raymond looked at Elizabeth's photo on his desk. The research center had become everything she would have wanted. A place of healing, hope, and humanity. His journey from desperate father to advocate for change had transformed not just his own life, but countless others. The afternoon sun streamed through his office windows as Raymond prepared for his next meeting. On his desk lay the latest statistics. Hundreds of families helped, dozens of ethical research projects in progress, and a growing network of support that stretched across the country. The Gallagher name had indeed become synonymous with hope and healing, but more importantly, with the truth that redemption was possible, even from the darkest of circumstances. The autumn breeze rustled through the trees as Raymond's car pulled up to Sarah's modest suburban home. The years had softened his once rigid demeanor, and a gentle smile played on his face as he held 2 envelopes in his hand. The garden leading to her front door was well tended, bursting with late-blooming flowers, so characteristic of Sarah's nurturing nature. Sarah opened the door before he could knock, her face lighting up with recognition. Though time had left its mark on both of them, her warm eyes still held the same compassion that had changed their lives years ago. "Raymond, what a surprise," she said, ushering him inside. Her home was cozy and welcoming, with photos of the children from over the years displayed proudly on the walls. "Would you like some tea?" "That would be lovely," Raymond replied, following her into the kitchen. He watched as she moved about, preparing their drinks with the same careful attention she had once shown his children. "I have something for you," he said, once they were settled at her small kitchen table. He handed her the envelopes, his fingers lingering for a moment, as if reluctant to let go of the precious cargo they contained. Sarah opened the first envelope carefully. Olivia's elegant handwriting filled the pages. "Dearest Sarah, I'm writing this from my office at the Children's Medical Foundation, where we just approved funding for another research project. Every time I sign off on these grants, I think of you. You taught me that true healing comes not just from medicine, but from love and understanding." Sarah's eyes welled up as she read about Olivia's achievements, her advocacy work, her public speaking engagements, and most importantly, her happiness. The young woman who once struggled to walk now traveled the world, sharing her story and inspiring others. The second letter was from Ethan, his words carrying the quiet strength he had developed. "Sarah, remember how you used to sit with me during those endless nights when the pain was too much? You taught me that strength isn't about hiding our struggles, but about facing them with courage. Today, I help design adaptive technology for children with disabilities. Every innovation is inspired by what you showed us, that limitations don't define us." Raymond watched Sarah's reactions as she read, remembering how she had stood by them all, even when he had tried to push her away. "They wouldn't be who they are today without you," he said softly. Sarah wiped away a tear, carefully folding the letters. "They did all the hard work themselves. They're remarkable people, Raymond." "They had remarkable help," he insisted. "You showed me what I couldn't see back then, that healing isn't just about finding the right treatment. It's about being present, being honest, being human." Through the kitchen window, they could see children playing in the neighborhood park. Raymond thought about how far his own children had come. Olivia, now running her own foundation, had recently spoken at the United Nations about medical ethics and patient advocacy. Ethan's technology company was revolutionizing adaptive equipment for children with disabilities. "Did you ever imagine," Sarah asked, "that day when I first arrived at your house that we'd end up here?" Raymond shook his head, thinking back to the desperate, guilt-ridden man he had been. "I was so focused on fixing everything with money, with treatments. You helped me see that what they really needed was their father." They sat in comfortable silence, sipping their tea, sharing the quiet satisfaction of knowing that their shared journey had led to such profound healing. The photos on Sarah's walls told the story of that transformation, from the early days of pain and uncertainty to graduations, achievements, and moments of pure joy. "They want to name a wing of the new research center after you," Raymond mentioned, watching Sarah's expression turn to surprise. "The Sarah Mitchell Center for Family Support. They insist that every family going through medical trials should have someone like you in their corner." Sarah's eyes filled with tears again, but her smile was radiant. The greatest gift has been watching them grow into such compassionate, strong adults. That's worth more than any named building.